on this computer. Okay, we are recording.
Well, welcome back. That was a commercial break.
Benita, just take it away. Go with it.
Like we're getting at a point in our society where you can't not have technology in some way. It's just, there are very few industries that you can say don't use technology at all. And right. I'm not even sure that I can honestly name it, to be perfectly honest. Like I'm struggling to even think about that. But yeah, that was the reason why, what prompted me to put in the civic tech in there, as well as education, construction and manufacturing. I'm just thinking a little bit more broadly beyond what we were calling the FANG companies, the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Googles, and really just thinking a little bit more holistically about when you think about your career and you think about what you want to achieve. It's not just money, and it's not just
right.
applying your skill. It's what do you value? What do you value, and what impact do you want to make on the world?
So then that's going to take me to, and I wrote it down to pronounce it correctly, because I'm going to say GLIST, girl, but that's not right. Melanie. Did I say it right?
Melina.
Okay.
But they're similarly
So
spelled.
I've done a horrible job. So we're previewing, right? We're setting in the stage and laying the foundation for chapter 3 of Women of Color in Tech, a blueprint for inspiring and mentoring the next generation of technology innovators. So in chapter 3, we're exploring not only what you will do, but where you will do it, right? So this week we look at industry and other options, and our guest, Benita Gordon, she is the founder the founder of the Education Concierge. I almost lost it for a second, Benita. I know this, but she's also an educator, because that's what's on my mind is your role as an educator. And we're really honored to have the author of Women of Color in Tech, Susanne Tedrick, and of course, Melina. All her GLIST girls are reading this book, 7th and 8th grade, middle school girls, all the way up to her college near peer instructors in Python. So what I wanted to do is bring you into this conversation, Benita, because I know you directly impact young people, kiddos, middle schoolers every day. And now in this virtualized environment, I think it's an opportune time to introduce them to content, literature, like Susanne has written, that literally breaks it down, doesn't gloss it over, and gives the students as well as their parents something to think about long-term, entry level, and then the career trajectory.
Right. And it goes back to that word I love, exposure. Like when you're looking in here, you go from chapter 2 flow into chapter 3. And then when we get to something that I love, that I always tell my young ladies and gentlemen, be an entrepreneur, own your own business.
Exactly. I thought that was very important to put in there, because you may come to a point and be like, okay, Susanne, I don't want to do any of these things. I don't want to do nothing. Like I have this unique idea that I want to bring to life. And I'm like, good, do it. You should. Like I am totally an advocate of embracing your creativity and your passions, and translating that into something that you can nurture and own from start to finish. So I thought it was really important to talk about entrepreneurism, and especially since many women of color are pursuing that path, because for whatever reasons, they're not necessarily finding the roles that they want in more formal settings.
That's why it's important. You're going to occupy spaces, one, that are there, and two, you're going to occupy spaces that have never been there, because you're going to make them. And that's the important part.
For chapter 3, Susanne, what do you want our readers to take away? What do you want to highlight now to make sure that when they see it, they know exactly what you were referring to?
So when we were looking at chapter 2, it was kind of starting with the mindset, expand your pie of what what a tech role would look like. I look at chapter 3 as an expansion of that, making the pie even bigger. Now that we've kind of figured out what your interests are, where can you apply that skill to a place that really interests you, that really speaks to your values, your beliefs, and doesn't necessarily have to be a big, corporate tech company. You will be surprised by the companies that hire tech people, and you may be surprised by how fulfilled you may be from working at a non-FANG or, big tech company. So just really thinking a little bit deeper about what your career could possibly look like.
I really like what you had said about, reaching out beyond the FANG, which was the acronym for Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, like the big five almost, because I think it's, reading the other sections, it was so easy to see that there are also so many more other tech jobs out there where you can really feel like you're making a very meaningful impact. And that's why when, you had brought up like civic tech before, that section I think really stood out to me because it was the one where I could feel like if I envisioned myself in that, kind of pursuing a career in civic tech, or if maybe our fellow campers and instructors did, I would be able to see like so directly, how the kind of impact this could have on, my local community, or maybe even bigger than that. I think that's why, from a personal standpoint, that's also why I've, GLIST has always been something that's motivated me, because when why I also, I have respect for teachers like you, Miss Gordon, because when you're teaching, when you're spreading this knowledge of programming, or whatever subject you are teaching, you can immediately see, the certain level of engagement, or if they're understanding that, if they're processing that. So things that are kind of under the realm of civic tech, or, for your community, that's really stood out to me. I think the other thing that is another, the chapter as a whole really did challenge the assumptions that we make about the non-tech jobs, and showing that, as you said, tech is really, it's everywhere. So Miss Gordon, what you had said about options, I think, it's so important to know your options, and to know that there are so many in tech, and that they're not limited in any way. And I think if we're thinking about, groups who are generally, have been strayed away from them for so long, having this as a resource and seeing it's not just the big four, or that, you can find a tech career anywhere, is so encouraging. And it makes it so much, and kind of, going back to just what we had really wanted out of the book, as a whole, it just shows that, a career in tech is not so far away. It's not a pipe dream. It's something that's so, it's achievable. And of course there will be, barriers, but when you have a blueprint, when you have something to look back to, it helps lead a path for that. So I enjoyed the third chapter.
Well, I'm glad you did. And you actually brought up something that I think is very important, and I think is something that people should try to remember in the course of their career, which is, what do you enjoy? Money is important. I don't want to make it out to be like you don't need money to survive or live. I'm like, I am not that person that says that message. Like, money is very important, but it's not the only thing. And when you work for larger tech companies, there are certain things you are afforded, but it may not necessarily be in line with what you want, or what you value, or what you enjoy. You may enjoy having a little bit more community outreach. You may enjoy construction and manufacturing. You may enjoy education. It's just really just or healthcare for that matter. So it's really thinking about what do I enjoy doing? Where can I apply my skills? And what's going to keep me motivated beyond just money? Because taking a job simply for money, only like the wanderlust with that only lasts for so long. And so just thinking about it a little bit more deeply.
I know earlier we were talking about civic engagement and technology and how maybe on the surface doesn't seem to pair. And then I think about hacktivism. I think about the bad guys, quote unquote, or the red team that uses technology and their skill set to move forth political and civic initiatives, or just the way that they feel about things. And I think that to have those that are following the proper channels be in a position to use technology for the right reasons is really important. And Susanne, as you said about your incentives, is it that you're able to work your whole life doing something you believe in versus working your whole life for a paycheck or a pension. And I think the millennials, the Gen Zs, there isn't a promise of a pension. For most of them, right?
I don't even know who still offers pensions, but they're very few and far between.
They are. So, Melina, the work that you're doing with the GLIST girls, do you consider it entrepreneurism? What do you consider it?
I'll be honest, I was very honored when Miss Tedrick called me an entrepreneur, because I never classified myself that way. Like, I don't know. Because I guess I had associated the term with business and startup. Whereas I always saw GLIST as an organization. I don't know. I think it was always just like whatever presumptions I had about the terms. I will say though, in reading, the entrepreneurism section, and like the getting started, especially, looking at the organizational piece of, of having the necessary, steps and, a business plan, and whatnot. I think there were definitely some things that resonated, or some things that I feel like I've had to do with GLIST when it came to just like presenting it and throwing it out there. And trying to recruit interest, not necessarily from investors, maybe like from educators, from other 8th graders, middle schoolers. So the audience was different, but I think, it kind of runs along similar lines. And while we were kind of discussing that section, I kind of realized that you were all answering a question that I did want to ask during this discussion, because I did notice that the entrepreneurism section was considerably longer than the other subsections in this chapter. And so, I was at first wondering, like, was this intentional? And if so, like, why did you make that choice as an author? While listening, I realized that it was. Tell me if I'm wrong. For one, what Miss Gordon said about if you have this idea, go ahead and make it a reality. Go and pursue that dream and take that action. And then 2, for what you said, Miss Tedrick, about also knowing that this is the real deal. Here are the steps you need to take. Let's actually kind of bring it down to earth. But what I liked, especially after kind of the whole 101, bring it down to earth, this is what it takes to, start a business. I did like the last section of that, which was, I think it was titled Keep Going or Stop. And I appreciated what you wrote at first, that, there are ways to find satisfaction in your work or in your startup, even if they're not as a parent. So I think it was almost kind of like, inspiration, but realistic inspiration. And I mean that in a good sense. You know, it wasn't kind of what you had said about like glorifying or romanticizing it. It was, you can still find positives in what you do, even if you don't see the results that fast, or maybe in our case in GLIST, if you don't see the impact right away, you know that what you're doing right now is just a step towards that. So it was a really good balance of, you know, the real deal, but also kind of, you know, staying positive after having read about the real deal, and like knowing, you know, there are things I need to do, but I can do them. And, you know, if they don't work at first, I'll at least find, you know, something that, you know, something to keep me going, an incentive, even if, you know, nobody else sees it, or even if it's not like profitable at first. So.
Well, Melina, you brought up a very great point as to why the length for the other portions of the chapter are probably not as big as the entrepreneurism. And I guess where I was thinking is that for the industries that I talked about, preparation to getting into them isn't quite as intense sometimes. Sometimes it's just, you have that technical skill, and so it's more a matter of just understanding the industry that you're working in and the context of the industry. Whereas entrepreneurism, I mean, that requires some serious effort. And so the person that I interviewed for that section, Victoria Scott, is a good friend, and she's also an entrepreneur. And we talked about this at length because, as I said, you don't want to give people this impression that entrepreneurism is just, oh, I've decided to run a business and that is the only thing that you have to do. So like Benita had brought up at the beginning, like, you know, people think that entrepreneurs don't have to answer to anybody. Quite the opposite. You have to answer to a lot of people at this point, you know, and you know, like you have to make some, you know, tough decisions. So it was to make sure that you understand, as you said, like what you're getting into, but also, you know, it's not like it's going to not be a great experience either. It's just, you shouldn't go into it thinking, you know, I'm gonna buy it, you know, become an LLC and that's it. Like, that's the only thing that I have to do. Like, no, there's a lot more you have to do. and just being ready for that, but knowing that you have a lot of resources and people that will be more than willing to help you, more than willing to guide you, and to just really, you know, to make certain things happen.
Well, Benita, thank you for joining us. Between Susanne and I, we're going to make sure that you get copies of the book to share with your middle school students.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
As always, Melina, go ahead.
Yes. No, I said we have a girls group starting, and I just want to say thank you for inviting me. It was funny because Melina was like, Ms. Gordon, I was like, oh, I'm old. But I do want to say this, in that I appreciate you, because one of the things that I'm always looking for is who's next? Like, who's next? Like, I know 23 years in, I'm tired. Who's next? And I appreciate you being next. When you started speaking about the program, I want you to go back and look at this video, and I want you to see how you were very calm. And when we started speaking about your program, it just, and so I appreciate you. I appreciate that. Neferteri, I appreciate you. Thank you. And I'm going to be like Miss Tedrick also for even writing this book. Because me being an English teacher, always looking for books that represent or a different type of book, this is important. And being able to say, okay, we're going to read this chapter like you're doing now, and I'm going to steal the ideas and use it with my girls.
Please
and invite y'all over. So just be ready for the next group to come behind. But thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Yeah, and just to reiterate Nefertari's point, whatever you feel here and you share here, you know, share freely with others. My my guiding principle has always been to be of service to others and to help others and build that awareness. And so I am always on board for that, and like do whatever you have to do, and however I can help, more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you,
Melina, yay.
Yeah, thank you. And the thing with the last name, I mean, that was just how I was raised. I hope it didn't make you feel old or anything.
No,
I think 44
I mess
is
with you.
quite
I'm from the
young.
South. I'm from the South. That's what you do.
Good parents. Good parents.
Yes.
Right? All right. So GLIST girls, enjoy chapter 3. Next week, we're going to preview chapter 4, Emerging Technologies. This is from Women of Color in Tech. It's a blueprint for inspiring and mentoring the next generation of technology innovators. Until next time.